What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another spring practice report video here. It is March 30th, so we are just a couple days away from April 1st. As I've mentioned before, a ton of spring games coming on April 9th. So we are getting closer and closer to a big weekend in spring games. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like I've mentioned before, there will be a ton of reaction videos here on the YouTube channel. So make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you're notified when all of these videos go live, because we are going to do a ton of those wrap-up videos, just quick reactions on what we thought of the spring games, which there are a lot. We'll have a better number for you guys tomorrow. I just know it's a lot of them. But for today, we're going to take you guys on a quick ride around the country and update you on a couple schools' spring practices. All right, so much like yesterday, we are going to kind of jump all over the place, but we are going to start in the SEC with Mississippi State. We know that Will Rogers is going to be the quarterback, and he's likely going to be good for UNCFF purposes. I know he's starting to get a little bit of NFL draft buzz. I kind of like it and I kind of don't, but regardless, he's got to throw the ball to someone, right? We know Jaden Walley was a guy that Austin was really high on last year. There are multiple people in this rotation right now for those top three spots. Austin Williams, Caleb Ducking, Jaden Walley, Ledrick Griffin, Jameer Galvin, Christian Ford, and Jordan Mosley seem to be the main guys. However, Caleb Ducking, Austin Williams, and Jaden Walley are the top three that for the most part have been running with the one. So I'm leaning that way. Obviously, again, Jaden Walley was decent last year. He had his moments, is probably the best guy to bet on, just talent-wise. But there's a lot of moving around at that wide receiver position. Again, you want that wide receiver one in a Mike Leach offense. Those guys just tend to produce, but it's really not shaken out yet on what we were expecting. Speaking of possible good receiving options, at Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin was pumping up versatile weapon tight end Michael Trigg today, talking about how excited he is, the size, speed, specimen, and what he can do in this offense. We already know he has that amazing connection with Jackson Dart. And I do think that he's going to be good. If you look at Harrison Bryant, who's now in the NFL, tight end for the Cleveland Browns, and what he was able to do at FAU under Lane Kiffin, I do expect them to use Trigg that way as well. There's not really a lot of solid weapons at Ole Miss that I'm betting on. Is it Jonathan Mingo? He was good last year before the injury. Does he bounce back and become that number one target? So I think Trigg is definitely an exciting and interesting person to bet on, especially because of how weak that tight end position is outside of really those top couple guys in Michael Mayer and Brock Bowers. Speaking of tight ends that are impressing, Moliki Motavo, I think is how you say his name. I'm probably wrong, but the sophomore tight end out of Oregon. He has really been impressing with, unfortunately, Bo Nix at quarterback, which kind of sucks. Dan Lanning, sorry about that noise. Dan Lanning, head coach, was speaking very highly of Bo Nix here today, the transfer quarterback. Now, doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to win the job. We could still be seeing Ty Thompson win it. Probably not great that he's not out there pumping up Ty Thompson and he's out there pumping up Bo Nix. But it also could be that, hey, he doesn't want Bo Nix to transfer out, because we know how much it matters to have that depth there in the quarterback room. But Bo Nix has been looking good, as has Ty Thompson, and so has Moliki Motavo, who has really been impressing at the tight end position. Last little note here on Oregon. Byron Cardwell is just continuing to run with the ones, practically the only one from everything I'm seeing. So just wheels up for Byron Cardwell, which we kind of already knew in the earlier spring practice reports with the move of Seven McGee to slot wide receiver. That kind of just seemed to be the thing. But now that the reports are coming out that Byron Cardwell has looked so well in practice, I think that's just even greater news for him. Texas A&M. So they have not had an open practice or actually just any kind of practice for the past couple days. The last practice they had was on the 28th, and What's interesting about that was Baylor Cupp, who we now know is in the transfer portal, but he's been running with the one. So I just found that it was very interesting that he is there. But Haynes King has continued to get. They're splitting the reps, but from everything I'm reading, Haynes King is continuing to look really good in those reps with the one. Amari Daniels is running at running back. You got Chase Lane, Anaya Smith, and Evan Stewart continuing to impress with the ones as well. Max Johnson ran with the twos in the last practice. Ernest Crownover, the running back, and then Jalen Preston, Moose Muhammad, and Yule Keith Brown. What is more interesting to me, and I'm just going to point this out again, there's not a lot of talk about LJ Johnson. And everywhere I look, whether it's Twitter, message boards for 24/7 Sports, On3, Rivals, anywhere I look, I cannot find anything hinting at or talking about any kind of injury for LJ Johnson. Now, maybe they're just not playing him right now. Obviously, if he doesn't play in the spring game, I'm going to be even more worried. But he was a guy we were expecting to take a massive step up this season. It was Travion Henderson, Will Shipley, and then there was a lot of talk, from myself included, that LJ Johnson could step up and be that third running back in that class. He's not doing anything at spring practice, and that does seriously worry me, especially for a guy who's getting drafted as high as he is in our drafts. He may be a running back that I'm going to start fading hard because there's just no positive news coming out from him. Now, maybe that'll change in the spring game and moving into fall, but right now it's not looking good for LJ Johnson. Going over to Florida really quick. Anthony Richardson, Florida had an open practice today, so some notes from that was that Anthony Richardson had some very nice passes, but he still struggled to produce consistently. While he does do a good job at times going through reads and making the right pass, and then a couple plays he doesn't. He stares down his receivers too much. Obviously, it's still early on, but it's not looking good on that aspect of things for consistency and him not staring down his receivers. There are also reports, though, that there's still a large gap between Richardson and Jack Miller. So that does, I think, kind of mean wheels up for Anthony Richardson. He's been being drafted highly. There have been some, including myself, saying, hey, like, Jack Miller may fit what Napier wants a little bit more at quarterback. Maybe he's going to get the job. The fact that they're already staying 7 practices in at Florida, that there's still a massive gap between the two, typically you see these guys and these coaches saying like, hey, it's close. It's 50-50. It could go either way because they don't want these guys to transfer. Like Jack Miller's not transferring out more than likely. If he does, he's got to sit a year. So they're being, I think, a little bit more honest about this. The fact that they're saying there's a big gap between the two is just nothing but good news for at least Anthony Richardson's stock. There are always talks, though, that if Miller were to be put in on duty, he would be good. Apparently, A-Rich's favorite target has been Xavier Henderson, who's been making a ton of great plays and been a very good deep threat. Justin Shorter has also been fairly good in the red zone in the past couple practices. So those two guys getting a lot of love here as well from the Florida staff. There was one more name, and I'm sorry, I forgot it. I got to pull my other note up. Lorenzo Lingard as well. Demarcus Bowman did have a good practice today as well. There was reports that he broke off quite a couple runs there. I still don't know that he unseats Montreal Johnson, but hey, if this might be the time to sell him if that those reports get kind of widely reported, because I don't know that it's there with Demarcus Bowman. Going over to Memphis really quick, they also had an open practice here recently. Seth Hennigan just continues to look comfortable in leading the group. Jay Von Ducker seems to be the guy who is really impressing out of the backfield, especially in catching the ball. Grant Gunnell has also looked good. All the reports are that he is 100% recovered, which I had mentioned a little bit ago. Still splitting time with the ones and twos. Does look like Hennigan is getting more first-team reps. So again, they're saying it's a battle, but based on seeing some of that stuff, maybe Hennigan is still going to be the guy. You guys know I'm a big fan of Grant Gunnell, so I'm pulling for him. But it looks like it's, at least right now, Hennigan's job to lose. Going over to Notre Dame really quick, and this story, when I read it, it brought a tear to my eye. It made me so happy. Austin's favorite running back, Audric Estime, has been looking really good in practice for the Fighting Irish. He has been considered this just like large tank running back who's just going to be like a goal line guy and run people over. Well, so far in practice, he's been making people miss in space. He's had sharper cuts than expected and has actually shown some very good explosive lateral agility. He's been impressing as a receiver on one-on-one drills as well and in scrimmage. And his 3-on-3 screen drill portion, he has been very good, including making linebackers miss him in the open field and then running them over. While they are still expecting him to likely be the short yardage goal line back, the fact that he is showing a little bit more explosiveness and he's showing the fact to be able to make defenders miss, they're saying he may be opening up more of a role for himself. Very, very intrigued because it's all been Chris Tyree and Logan Diggs, let's be honest. And we know that because Austin, when Austin speaks, he's a gospel around here sometimes at C2C, and that does drive ADP. Estimate has fallen a massive amount, and these reports, it wasn't just one. I found multiple reports about how good Estimate has looked the past couple practices because I've not really talked about Notre Dame in a while. So I was going back and looking at different practice notes. He's been impressing in multiple practices here. All right, let's go over to Cincinnati. Excuse me. All right, so same thing with Cincinnati. I haven't talked about them in a while. I did probably 2 practice reports on them from the beginning of time, talking about the battle between Ben Bryant and Evan Prater and how it's very close. A lot of people are saying possibly Bryant because he's got that experience, but Prater, his explosiveness, the athlete in him. There are now multiple people close to the team are saying that if they had to pick a starter right now to start on September 3rd, they're taking Ben Bryant. They're giving him the slight edge over Prater through 7 practices because of just how good he's looked passing the ball. Now, they're still saying that Prater is right on his heels, and a lot of that is just because of what he can do off script, off platform, whatever he can do with his legs. He's definitely a better runner when things break down, and that is where Prater is succeeding. But within the rhythm of an offense, Ben Bryant is just blowing Prater away on that side of things. And so it looks like it's leaning heavier and heavier toward Ben Bryant being the guy for the Bearcats, which is going to be interesting because if he's announced the starter, what does Evan Prater do? I do like Prater. He's a guy that I was pumping up earlier this offseason at the past couple practice reports. So I've told you when I talked Cincinnati, maybe we need to pump the brakes on him. And the fact that there's multiple people who cover the team are now saying that if they had to pick a starter, they're picking Ben Bryant. That's got to be concerning. One big interesting note out of Cincinnati. The last time we talked about them in spring practice reports, I said that we know that Jerome Ford is gone and they don't really have a running back to kind of like replace there. So what are they going to do? My bad. Hit the wrong button. Miles Montgomery, the second year back out of Jacksonville, Florida, who has prototypical 3-down size, has emerged over the past 4 practices and is the guy that is standing out 7 practices through right now. So I think that might be a guy I'm willing to take a stab on. We know how they like to use those running backs. They do have 4 guys in there, but Miles Montgomery is the guy who's really standing out now through 7 practices. I would bet on him. Again, he's got prototypical size. He's a receiving down back as well. Is he going to be Jerome Ford? Probably not. But he's a guy who I guarantee you right now is not being drafted. So why not take him and then see what happens, especially if they're not going to have Prater there, who could obviously take some rushing yards and everything from him. I don't think Ben Bryant's going to be doing that much. And they may hand the ball off a decent amount at times here because Cincinnati, maybe are not expected to make it back to the playoffs, but I'm sure they think that they can. Miles Montgomery, second year back, guy to pay attention to. 2 more teams before we get out of here. Oklahoma State has had a couple of interesting practices here. So Spencer Sanders is practically the locked-in starter here, guys. He's looked very good in passing drills, especially to Talon Cetron, who has continued to impress with his size. He's continued to stand out and look like not even just the best freshman, but one of the best receiving options on the field. I mean, they are literally saying like he is part tight end, part receiver with what he's doing. Like his size and intangibles are just showing in every single practice. They're hitting him on fades to the end zone, throwing up corner routes. Like it's ridiculous apparently how good Cetron is looking. He's a guy that I'm willing to take early in my drafts because I just think with the way they pass the ball, Cetron is going to have a massive year as a freshman. I think And Garrett Rangel, while he is not going to be the starter, I did just want to point out, is continuing to impress as well. He's a guy that I'm pretty sure Alfred was very high on in our freshman guide, a guy that he talked a lot about when we did our process going through the freshman guide. He's continuing to impress. He's looking good. So I think he's likely the guy for the future there at Oklahoma State. And last but not least, Arizona State here. Just a couple updates. So Trenton Borgo, who I believe is how you say his name, is continuing to get most of the first team offense reps. You do have Paul Tyson, who transferred in from Alabama, has run with the twos the past couple practices. And they're still splitting time between Xavier Valade and Daniel Nada. I don't know who I'd really bet on. I'd probably just avoid both of them, as I don't think that Arizona State's going to be very good anyways. Andre Johnson, Ricky Pearsall, and Elijah Badger, Jalen Conyers continue to kind of be the guys there at wide receiver. A lot of people had asked about LV Bunkley Shelton as I was doing these things, and he is definitely dealing with an injury. Again, he is there. And he is with the team. He was suited up, but did not do anything in at least the parts of practice that the media was able to observe. So he's back with the team. He at least had and was dressed for practice, but with what they were able to see, he was not practicing. So that is your last update there. We will be back again tomorrow with more schools and more updates. I hope everybody has a great day. We will talk